to contemplate.
Yeah.
But bringing it a little bit down to earth, there are Alberto Villoldo, who is a shamanic teacher, says that human beings are evolving from Homo sapiens to Homo luminous. So we are getting to a point where we're using energy, where we're working with energy to heal ourselves, to heal the planet, to, that's where maybe humanity is evolving toward. And I find it fascinating, and I certainly want to read more about that.
Yeah. All right, so let me go back to the first point. And this is often where I sound cynical or skeptical, and maybe that's true. But in the spirit of the show, it's more to I think this is so interesting. I think it's so important too. Obviously, I mean, to me, what's more important than a conversation like this? So everything that we've said thus far, I think there's a lot of good reason, logic, scientific evidence, arguably, to believe it is true. But I think the nature of it is, and I'm curious if you agree, that we don't know for sure. We don't actually know. It seems to be that's the case. There's a lot of things that suggest that. So it certainly could be true. But because we never know for sure, how you've obviously, to some extent, back to what this show is about, the value system, you value that because you believe, or at least assume, that it is true, and you act accordingly, which is great and makes sense. Where does that confidence come from? Like, is there any fear in you that says maybe this thing is actually totally different than I thought it was? To use maybe an extreme example, maybe the Puritans had it right. Maybe that actually is, there is a God that created this in a very specific way and wants these rules to be followed. A lot of people would say that's unlikely, and sure, it is unlikely, but it's possible. How do you deal with that uncertainty of it? Where does the confidence come from to say, no, this is what I'm going to live in accordance with?
Right. So as somebody who's equally left brain, right brain, someone who loves spirit and science equally, because I don't actually think they are different. I think science just hasn't caught up, or spirit hasn't caught up, or whatever, but I actually see them, very much intertwined. So the way that I test that theory is to apply it to every other theory that I hear. And so far, what the value system that I live by has not been shaken from its core. So if the Puritans were right, there's a disconnect there. There's still a disconnect. There's still someone being superior to someone else. Because I have studied many different religions. I teach a course in different religions. So I can say that the idea of a damning God, or a God that is a punishing God, doesn't hold all of the majesty. There, is there negativity and evil and darkness in the world? Yes, just as much as there is light. It has to be that way. We have to be balanced. So we have this beautiful balance within us too. The issue is not aligning with it or judging it, not to say, for me to accept that I have homicidal rage in me as much as I have compassion and love and care, means now I've equaled my balance sheet, and I think that's what the goal is, right? So it can't, I can't imagine a world where there is an imbalance in, like I'm thinking about the puritanical version of the world. The imbalance doesn't work for me scientifically.
And it doesn't work, again, just to press on that, it doesn't work because when you logically look at the evidence, for lack of a better word, it doesn't add up. It doesn't seem like that works out. It's not, because what I fear often is that it's aspirational. Like, we want it to be a certain way, and therefore it's become self-fulfilling, and we assume, well, it has to be that way because that's what I want it to be, and it makes me feel more comfortable. What you're saying is, like, sure, there's probably some of that in all of us, but you're trying to step outside of it, be as objective as possible, and just look at what it actually is. And when you look at that, it tells you, it just seems very unlikely that is what we're actually dealing with.
It's too limited. It's too limited for the great mystery of the world, and if we went by, and I know we just keep harping on this one example, but puritanical, look at how many women have contributed so positively to the world that would otherwise not be able to without their husband's permission or something like that, which probably wouldn't be given.
Right.
And there are way too many other stories about this Abrahamic God that don't include that, you know. And so for me, I'm always looking for the balance in the equation,
Yeah.
right? What's the common denominator? We're solving for X all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And so, so I try different, you know, and believe me, I have tried my hand at several religions to see, like, what's this really like? And what would it be like for me to just be a quiet wife to someone? Well, that doesn't necessarily agree with my sexuality or my gender identity or what, you know, see what I'm saying? So we have, if there is divine creation, then however we are made is the way we are meant to be made, right? If we really, really want to give the omnipotent God props, right? We have to say that all beings, exactly as they are made, are divine.